Hiker Church, Pastor David here, and this is another midweek encouragement for you. Last Sunday, Pastor Rick talked to us about the spiritual discipline of generosity. Now, I don't need to tell you that these are some pretty uncertain and chaotic times of our life. Our circumstances tend to breed anxiety and fear and insecurity and instability. And in a moment like this, where everything kind of seems a little chaotic, our tendency, I believe, is towards self-preservation, self-protection, maybe hoarding our time, energy, resources. Maybe even a spirit of greed comes in. But ultimately, I think that these circumstances are ripe for breeding a posture of scarcity in our lives. Now, I'm not trying to guilt anyone in this moment or shame anyone in this moment. I think this is a natural tendency when we're faced with circumstances like this. However, I want to encourage and challenge us as a church that we can reflect something completely different. We can reflect generosity back to our world, back to our culture, back to our town. And how do we do that? So I think whenever we have a negative rhythm or an unhealthy habit in our life or a hard issue or a sin issue, what we tend to do is say to ourselves, I'm not going to do that moving forward. I'm going to try extra hard to remove that thing from my life, to just say no next time temptation kind of creeps my way. I'm going to get on top of this thing and remove it from my life. Now, self-control is a fruit of the Spirit. I'm not trying to knock self-control. But when we just try to modify or remove our negative behaviors, I don't think that's the whole of what God is calling us to do. We don't want to just remove the sin in our lives. We want to pursue the ways of Jesus on the other side of things. So here's the thing. If we just try to remove that scarcity mindset, if we try to remove the tendency towards self-preservation in our life, something else is just going to backfill that vacuum that's created. So what we want to do is pursue the ways of God, and that is in generosity. That when we pursue generosity, it actually undermines that tendency towards self-preservation, towards hoarding, towards greed, towards scarcity that is so natural for our lives to exhibit at this moment. So why does generosity do that? Why does generosity undermine that scarcity mindset in our lives? Well, generosity really is just the proclamation that God is in control. He is the one who is the generous one, a good father, a giver of good gifts, acknowledging that all of our blessings, whether they be financial, whether they be physical, whether they be our gifts and our talents, whether it's even the air that we breathe in our lungs, all of it is from God. All of it is His. And so generosity is the acknowledgement that it's all yours anyway, God. It's an acknowledgement to ourselves, to the world, to God, that everything that we have is His. And therefore, just as He was generous to us, we are going to be generous with others. Now, what does this look like? Because some of you are saying, generosity is the last thing that I'm thinking about right now because my financial situation looks completely different. Well, Paul talks a little bit about this in 2 Corinthians chapter 9. He says, each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to bless you abundantly so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. As it is written, they have freely scattered their gifts to the poor. Their righteousness endures forever. Now he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will also supply and increase your store of seed and will enlarge the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion. And through us, your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. Now, what is Paul saying here? Paul is saying that at every occasion, at every time, God calls us to be generous. Now, it's going to look different for each person, but God cares so deeply about generosity, our generosity, because it reflects His generosity, that He wants to bless us, to provide for our needs, to bless us all in different ways with different gifts and different resources so that we can be a blessing to others. Meaning that in every occasion, every circumstances, no matter how our situations look, God has given us all that we need to be generous. God has given us all that we need to be generous in our lives. So here's my encouragement and my challenge for you this week. I would encourage you to look at areas of your life that maybe a scarcity mindset has creeped in. Maybe you are self-preserving and self-protecting. Maybe you're hoarding a certain area of your life, whether that be your finances or your time, your energy, your gifts, your physical resources, to identify those areas. And I'll encourage you to write it down, to pray those things over with God, but also to invite people into your life to talk these things through. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a spouse that you can process these things with. So once you identify those things, here's my challenge, and this is going to be uncomfortable, and that's kind of the point, is to be generous in that area of your life. To be generous in that area of your life. Now you might say, hey, my financial situation looks completely different. I get it. I'm not asking you or challenging you to be reckless, not in any way. But what generosity looks like probably right now, or at least in that area of your life, is generosity probably looks and feels a lot like discomfort. I want to encourage and challenge you to be generous in that specific area of your life to the point of discomfort. Now, that's going to look different for each of us. That's going to look different depending on our situation or really kind of the gifts and the resources that we have in our lives. But we all have the opportunity and ability to be generous, especially in a time like this. Now, that could be challenging, that could be convicting. If you want to process this, or if you have questions, shoot us a message in Messenger on Facebook. And if you have other ways that you've found to be generous in this time, please comment below this video and share with the community ways that we can be generous in a time like this. But we will not physically see you this Sunday, but we will be with you in spirit as we worship together this next Sunday over Facebook and YouTube. So we will kind of see you next Sunday.